Hello, my name is Peyton Bean, and today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of sexual reproduction. So first off, what is sexual reproduction? Sexual reproduction is the process through which two parents produce offspring which are genetically different from themselves and have combinations of their characteristics. During sexual reproduction, each parent contributes a haploid gamete, a cell with half the normal chromosomes. The two sex cells fuse during fertilization to form a diploid zygote, which has the normal amount of chromosomes. So for our first pro, we are going to explore the first of many pros of sexual reproduction. This is probably the most important of the pros: genetic variation. Genetic variation in offspring is very advantageous and allows for adaptation over time and improves the chance of survival and longevity in each species. For our second one, as we've touched on adaptation in the last slide, we are going to delve into that a little bit further. So species adaptation is the process by which species become fitted to their environment. It is a result of natural selection acting upon heritable variation over several generations. This loosely translates to the species adapts to its surroundings to better survive those environments or surroundings. And I've done some visual slides on the side too to show you exactly what that adaptation process looks like and why it happens. So piggybacking off of the last slide about surviving their surroundings, we're going to go on a deeper dive into why that is important. With genetic variation, there is more chance that those organisms will survive their environment by using variation to help them change physically and in other ways. This also includes their ability to fight certain diseases better than species with little genetic variation. The disease is less likely to affect all of the individuals of the population, so that's a really big pro as well. So an example of a benefited organism of sexual reproduction is rabbits. Rabbits are a great example of species that has benefited from sexual reproduction and genetic variation. If a disease were to hit the rabbit population, then perhaps not all of the rabbits would be affected because there is variation in the population. This means that some of the individuals would survive and be able to reproduce and generate more offspring that even more so would have immunity to those diseases, which is really cool. So now we'll get into cons or disadvantages of sexual reproduction, and there are a few. In reality, for an organism, though, the pros do outweigh the cons, which is a good thing. However, there are disadvantages to sexual reproductions for a species or an organism. The main con would be that it takes time and effort to find a mate in the wild, which hurts the chances of the species continuing their evolution. If they can't find a mate and they have to reproduce sexually and not asexually, then they can't do it by themselves, and they definitely need a partner for that. So they can't continue on their legacy. So there is one other main concern for a species when it comes to sexual reproduction, or having to find a mate in order to produce. Simply put, the con or disadvantage is that the species cannot reproduce by itself or asexually, and a species cannot survive if they cannot reproduce. So in this case, the species is not asexual, then they do require a mate to continue the line. And I have put in the slide too that there are some endangered animals that this is affecting, so we'll get into that as an example of the detriment to the species because of sexual reproduction. And this is just one. There are definitely very many, but a very sad yet very real example of sexual reproduction being detrimental to a species is that of the North Atlantic right whale, which I've luckily seen in my lifetime, which is really cool. This is only one example of very many, like I said before. While commercial fishing is the biggest threat to this species, having to reproduce sexually when the population is dwindling is a huge disadvantage as well. So they kind of go hand in hand. If you're dwindling the population, then that means there's less mating, and it's already hard for them to mate and find mates. So if you're just dwindling their population, then it's kind of a vicious cycle. I think that I had read, actually, in this picture, this was an older picture, there's only 366 left in the wild, which is really sad, but there's some more information there about the North Atlantic right whale. And then for our last slide, we just have my cited sources. Thank you.